Good evening. Welcome to the Sultanate of Oman Television 7 o'clock news bulletin. First, the headlines. Global COVID-19 fatalities top 1.18 million as many European countries enforce lockdowns. The foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan meet for talks in Geneva as mediators pressed ahead with new efforts to negotiate a ceasefire of a disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. Good evening once again, and thank you for joining us. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail. The novel coronavirus has killed more than 1.18 million people since the outbreak emerged in China last December. At least 45.1 million cases have been registered. Of these, more than 30.2 million are now considered recovered. The United States remains the worst affected country with 228,675 deaths from nearly 9 million cases. After the U.S., the hardest hit countries are Brazil with 158,969 deaths, India 121,090, Mexico 90,773, and the United Kingdom with 45,955 deaths. Latin America and the Caribbean overall has 398,833 deaths. Europe 273,520. Asia 169,367. The Middle East 59,022. Africa 42,334 deaths. New COVID-19 cases in England increased by around 51,900 each day last week, up nearly 50% of the week before, suggesting that the incidence of new infections was still rising steeply and had not leveled off. The Office for National Statistics (ONC) infection survey estimate was up from an estimated 35,200 new daily cases the week before, when the ONS had said there were signs of leveling of new infections. The ONS said 568,100 people had COVID-19 infections between 17th to 23rd October, up from 433,300 and the week before. The ONS looks to estimate infection numbers in the community beyond those who have been tested, giving an estimate of prevalence that is unaffected by testing capacity. Authorities in Moscow were preparing for mass vaccinations against COVID-19, and Russia's daily tally of infections rose past 18,000 to a record high amid a shortage of doctors across the country. Moscow residents who want to be vaccinated against COVID-19 may be able to do so as early as next month if large volumes of doses are supplied by then. The capital was creating a large network of specialized vaccination rooms with 2,500 high-risk people, primarily doctors and teachers, having already been vaccinated. Around 9,000 Moscow residents have received both shots of the Sputnik V vaccine as part of an ongoing large-scale trial. The vaccine is taken in 2 doses with a 21-day gap. Russia is facing challenges in scaling up production of its vaccines, with President Vladimir Putin yesterday citing issues with the availability of equipment. Russia's COVID-19 death toll stood at 27,656, with at least 1.6 million infections. Japan's health ministry said coronavirus cases have topped 100,000 9 months after the first case was found in mid-January. The country confirmed 808 new cases yesterday, bringing the cumulative COVID-19 cases to 100,334. That includes 712 people who were on a cruise ship that was docked off a Japanese port earlier this year. About 1/3 of cases come from Tokyo. Nationwide, Japan has more than 1,700 deaths. Experts say Japan has so far managed to avoid explosive infections as in Europe and the US without enforcing lockdowns, most likely thanks to common use of face masks and disinfectant, as well as other common preventive measures, including social distancing. Now to Washington, President Donald Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden will campaign across battleground states in the American Midwest where the coronavirus pandemic has exploded again as they head into the final weekend before Election Day on Tuesday. Trump will hold rallies today in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota, while Biden has planned stops in Wisconsin and Minnesota as well as Iowa on his busiest day of campaigning during the general election race. Michigan and Wisconsin were two of the three historically Democratic industrial states, along with Pennsylvania, that narrowly voted for the Republican Trump in 2016, delivering him an upset victory. Minnesota, which has not voted for a Republican presidential candidate since 1972, is one of the few Democratic states that Trump is trying to flip this year. Biden running mate Kamala Harris and both of their spouses will spend their final day of campaigning on Monday in Pennsylvania, enabling them to hit all four corners of that closely divided state in the race's final hours. More than 82 million votes have been cast either by mail or in person, nearly 60% of the total number of votes in the entire 2016 election. Nagorno-Karabakh talks planned amid Azerbaijan's offensive. Azerbaijani forces are pushing deeper into Nagorno-Karabakh after more than a month of heavy fighting over the separatist territory. Armenia's defense ministry said intense clashes are going on in the south of Nagorno-Karabakh. Nagorno-Karabakh lies within the Azerbaijan, but has been under the control of ethnic Armenian forces backed by Armenians since a war ended in 1994. Relying on strike drones and long-range rocket systems supplied by Turkey in latest fighting, Azerbaijani troops have forged into Nagorno-Karabakh. Diplomats from Russia, the United States and France are set to meet with the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan in Geneva today for talking on ending the hostilities that have killed hundreds of people. Still to come in our news bulletin. The red tide phenomenon represent a great risk to sea environment and human. Once again, welcome to the news from the Sultanate of Oman television. A strong earthquake in the Aegean Sea has shaken Turkey and Greece. Today's earthquake was centered in the Aegean at a depth of 16.5 kilometers and registered at 6.6 magnitude. The European Mediterranean Seismological Center said the quake had a preliminary magnitude of 6.9 with an epicenter 13 kilometers northeast of Greek island of Samos. Turkish media said that earthquake was felt across the region Aegean and Marmara, where Istanbul is located. United Nations chief has planned for eventual peacekeeping exit from Congo. Secretary General Antonio Guterres has proposed a plan with benchmarks that would allow the more than 18,000 strong United Nations peacekeeping force in Congo to progressively transfer its activities to Congolese authorities. In a 15-page letter to the United Nations Security Council, the United Nations chief said the peacekeeping mission and the Congolese government agreed on the broad strategy on October 19th. If the Council endorses its overall direction, he said the United Nations will develop a transition plan, including additional measurable benchmarks. A vast country in Central Africa, Congo, has seen immeasurable greed in trying to control its mineral resources. At least 6 people were killed in the southeast of the United States, and more than 2 million people were without power after Hurricane Zeta slammed into the Gulf Coast and moved northeast. The first confirmed death from Zeta was a 55-year-old man in New Orleans who was electrocuted by a downed power line. This was followed by 4 deaths in Alabama and Georgia from trees crashing down on homes. A 58-year-old man in Mississippi drowned when he was trapped in rising seawater after taking video of the storm. Zeta spun up in the Caribbean Sea and went from a tropical storm to a damaging Category 2 hurricane in less than 4 days. It struck Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula and raced across the Gulf of Mexico to hit the U.S. coast late on Wednesday. It is the 5th named storm to strike Louisiana this year and the 27th named storm this season, one less than the record set in 2005. Hurricanes are getting stronger and spinning slower as they pick up energy from heat in the oceans due to climate change. Back here in the Sultanate, Oman oil price December 2020 delivery reached $37 and 65 cents per barrel. Oman oil price declined by 90 cents. The average price of Oman oil November 2020 delivery reached $41.60 per barrel, thus $2.72 lower than price of October 2020 delivery. Red tide is a common name for algae blooms, which are large concentrations of aquatic microorganisms. When the algae are present in high concentrations, the water may appear to be red. The red tide phenomena represent a great risk to sea environment and human. It was noted that some citizens and residents in the Sultanate were poisoned due to eating fish and shellfish in affected areas of this phenomenon. Hospitals in the Wilaya of Marbat treated some poisoning cases due to the impacts of red tide. The bodies concerned are monitoring this phenomenon that affects the coastlines of the Governorate of Dhofar, especially the eastern part. They urge citizens and residents in these areas not to eat some types of shellfish till the end of impacts of this phenomenon. For those who really like fish, they have to be really careful when you are in that particular place. This is the Sultanate of Oman television, and before we end tonight's bulletin, here are the main points once again. Global COVID-19 fatalities top 1.818 million as many European countries enforces lockdowns. And the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan meet for talks in Geneva as mediators ahead with the new efforts to negotiate a ceasefire over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. And with that, we do conclude this news bulletin brought to you live from this news center of the Sultanate of Oman television. Thank you for joining us and good night.